Okay, welcome back. This is part 3 of 12 of the Karmic Margin Call Project 2021 year-end report. Again, my name is Michael Schumann, coordinator. And today I'm going to go over some of the projects that had started in 2021 and will continue on through 2022. The reason why I wanted to highlight these at this point in the review is to let you know what is happening now, how you might want to be involved or how you can be involved. These are just the projects that I personally am involved with. There are other projects that I am not directly connected to as well, which are a part of the Karmic Margin Call Project, part of our joint ventures, our strategic alliances, and our partnerships. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. But there's the deep democracy conversation. I want to talk a little bit more about that today. There's the bridge conversation, which has to do with mental health, artistic expression, how to bring emotional intelligence and artistic expression into our mental health industry. There's also interspiritual communities, starting to have conversations around the bridge as well. Core fellowships. Collaboration. So with the Collaborative Innovation Institute, we're talking about the unification of facilitation, time banking and establishing an equal partnership economy. And there is also the Winfinity conversation. So these are the 6 projects that I'll be talking about over the next 20-25 minutes in this report. And if any of these conversations spark something for you or it would be something that you would be interested in, please feel free to contact me. And, as we go through the rotation of these conversations, we can have the first appreciation conversation with you, to include you in any of these projects or any of these conversations if you feel it might be a fit. So step 1 is the appreciation conversation. So that's how we start our relationships. The point of an appreciation conversation is just to be in the same space and start to find values, align values, and just be present. There's a lot of generous listening that goes into the appreciation conversation. To go from competitive relationships or competitive environment into a more collaborative environment, sometimes you just have to let the agenda go and just be present so that possibilities can emerge. So the deep democracy conversation. A little bit of the history. I joined the Phoenixville Area Time Bank back in September of 2029. I joined the board of that time bank in October of 2019. I'm sorry, not 2029, 2019. And I joined the board in 2019. And last year, as of December 2020, we started having fellowship conversations. The opening conversation was reuniting the country. How do we do it? There's about 20 people who attended that Zoom conversation. And throughout the year, we met once a month or twice a month. Sometimes there was just 2 of us there. Sometimes there was 6 or 7 of us there. But in about August or September of this year, 6 of us sat down and we met twice a month consistently and talked about deep democracy. How do we establish a safe environment where everybody really does have an equal say? What does that look like? What does that feel like? So that conversation, the deep democracy conversation, was an outgrowth of the Phoenixville Area Time Bank. The people involved, again, there are 6 people involved currently who are between the ages of 30 and 45. Jamie Parker, whom I mentioned as part of the core fellowship, is also a part of that group. So we are going to be debriefing tonight, actually, to talk about what our next steps are with that initiative and with that group. Some of the takeaways from that is that we're going to be focusing on establishing regenerative economies. We completed a matrix process. We looked at our values. We looked at our courses of action. There are, 4 or 5 other nonprofits in the Phoenixville area that we would like to establish deeper connection with, deeper communication with, perhaps even joint ventures with. And we really want to focus on, what does a regenerative economy look like? How do we establish it? How do we establish it on the local level? Another thing that we started discussing, and this was a very brave conversation, was what if we wanted to invite local politicians on opposing sides, a Democrat and a Republican? What if we wanted to invite them into these kind of human conversations? What is it going to take? Right now, we're not ready to take that step yet, but we discussed that. It was a very brave conversation. Another conversation was, can we start a dialogue with people who have very opposing views with COVID, with the vaccines, with the politicization of COVID? Again, something we're not quite ready for yet. There was some very emotional exchanges that happened on that front. But we're starting to discuss the values, what would need to be in place for us to be able to have that kind of conversation. But the biggest takeaway that I think came out of that was that deep democracy does not really exist as we know it in government. I think we have a system where we are pressured into voting on personalities who are always competing over ideology. And in that kind of environment, it's very difficult to find satisfaction. It's very difficult to find democracy where everybody truly has a voice. So one of my takeaways from that conversation was maybe democracy is not in debating ideology or making laws, but by really observing values and considering the courses of action together by filtering those actions through the values. So it's the kind of thing where you peel back the layers of the assumptions being made, some of the prejudice we have, on whatever side of the political fence we fall on, pulling back the assumptions and the prejudices and providing the safe space to really look at the values and talk about what we value. We find that common ground. So that was a big takeaway, and that's something I'm looking forward to exploring more in 2022. So the value is inclusiveness. And again, going back to the beginning of this presentation, there are no throwaway people. So I ask anybody who wants to come into this conversation, don't have to agree with it, but to maybe entertain the idea that everybody does have value outside of the power struggles or outside of the emotions that that we sometimes get lost in. And those emotions are often, a byproduct of the prejudices and the assumptions that we make or that we've been conditioned to make. So what I appreciate most about that conversation is that we completed all 6 conversations: appreciation, possibility, invitation, dissension, responsibility, and commitment. And I very much appreciate that we're going to take the next step. We're going to do another round of this here. I very much appreciate that we started talking about very difficult topic matter like political polarization, like COVID. So there's so much. I'm very appreciative that we really talked about in depth, which other organizations, which other nonprofits we would like to reach out to first. We're going to be discussing that tonight in our debrief. So I'm looking at my notes here. I think that's everything for the deep democracy conversation. And what I appreciate most about being able to share this information about what's it going to take to create a quadrillion dollar GDP is that it's more about the story. It's more about the relationship than it is about strategy. So what I appreciate this is, if you're still with me and you're still listening to this report, I appreciate that that seems to be a value for you, that you're generously listening. So I appreciate that we're starting to open up the conversation, even though it's just me in front of my computer at the moment. I very much appreciate that I have this platform to be able to start to talk about what's it going to take, to truly end poverty, to end war, to end all of this competitiveness, that creates the environment where war, poverty, and all of that starvation becomes necessary. So, and it's just wonderful to just be in the conversation. All right, so that's it for today. Tomorrow I'll be back to talk about the possibility conversation and the bridge. what is the bridge?